And I go ahead and mute all the mics. You can jump in anytime as you know. You guys can see my screen okay and hear me all right so far this morning? Let me bring up my chat window. Great. Thank you very much for responding to that. So I know I'm not talking to myself. All right. So again, this is the Python tutoring session. So I didn't get any, I looked at the discussion threads in my email this morning, and I didn't have any specific questions that had come up yet. But you guys can either post your questions to the chat or unmute your mic and yell out anything, and I'll try to answer anything that you might be having questions about regarding Python. Obviously, I can't answer your questions that are related specifically to an assignment or a final or whatever, but I can certainly answer any questions that are Python related if you have any. Make sure I got the chat.
Professor, I do have one question.
Of course, go ahead.
So this is somewhat related to the final, so I don't know if you'll shoot this down right away, but to keep it in more vague terms, I have 2 for loops I'm kind of using to run through a word list, searching for keywords. And I'm running into an issue where I have both of them set up with like an if and 2 elif statements.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is searching for if the specific word equals the word I'm looking for.
Right.
And then that'll increase the count. And then the other one I have set up with if I have variables set up as strings being the keywords, and then if the variable is in that word that it's currently searching through in the list to increase the kernel count or increase whatever count. And both of them are giving me different answers. And I thought both of these would work out to the same totals.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit of a hint, but let me ask you a question. If I have a list that has strings in it, so I can look at my list, right? Oh, I didn't capitalize it. So that's what my list looks like, right? And so you can, iterate through the list by saying for each string in my list. And I could say, I think what you're saying you're doing if each string, let's say ABC.
Yep, that's exactly what I've got.
Right. And you're doing that, and then you're going to say bump, count plus equals 1 or something like that. So that you have that. I didn't initialize count. Oh, I spelled string wrong. Oh, one more error in my attempt to do this. So then I can say count is 2, right? So I think that's what you're doing.
Correct.
So here's my question. Or let me give you a hint, okay? Mm-hmm. Instead of actually solving it for you. If I'm, as we've talked about throughout the semester, remember the objects that are created in Python, for example, a list object, because if I look at the type of my list, right,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to come back and tell me it's a list, right? But if I said my list dot, right, there are a bunch of methods that are built in to my list. And if you take a look at those, you may find a method. In other words, there's properties and methods associated with objects within Python, like strings and lists. And you might find a way to basically perform the operation you're looking for without having to create a loop. So take a look at that as a kind of a hint on how to actually, maybe a different way, not a better way, but a different way to approach what you're doing that will leverage some of the built-in capabilities that Python has for its objects, right? And that will allow you to potentially simplify what you're trying to do. So I would kind of step back and think about that for a bit and do some research on the list object and see if there are some methods there that might be able to help you.
All right, I appreciate it. That will help very much.
Okay, good, good. So again, sometimes with Python, it's a really good question, because sometimes with Python, it's like, it may not appear obvious, you know, even though we've covered it and done a bunch of these things, but it's not obvious to say, oh, wait a minute, how can I do this, you know, with maybe there's some methods that are associated with certain object types, whether it's a set or a dictionary or a string or a tuple or whatever, that might be able to help me solve, you know, a problem that may appear complex, but maybe simpler. So it's a really good question. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? That was a good one. Thanks, John. Nobody else? This is really easy. Everybody's got this down. Well, if there's not anything, I'm not going to cut you guys off. I'll let you think about it for a second, but I thought I would show you something that just to kind of show you something I've been working on that is certainly relevant to the times. And I might have shown this to you guys before, but can you guys see my screen? Okay, still. So this is an application that I've been working on for a couple of years now. This is something we call GeoOSINT. And basically what this is an application that's connected to Twitter. And in this particular example, I have a world city. Again, all of this is written in Python, 100%. There's nothing outside of Python being done here. So basically, I've selected a world city. I could select other places, but I've selected a world city, obviously Kiev, Ukraine, right? And I basically created a bounding box around, let's call it a geofence around Kiev that's 100 miles in distance. And I've set my duration until stopped. You could set it for as long as you want. So I'm using a Twitter third-party library called Tweepy that allows me to create a bounding box and collect tweets that happen live within that particular area. And then basically, just to kind of show you what you can do as you kind of advance your skills within Python, there's a lot you can do here. And so what's happening is it's capturing, let me get rid of my, make sure my emails are off here. What it allows you to do is basically capture tweets that are occurring within that 100-mile bounding box region that may in fact contain images, right, as well as text, as well as emojis, as well as, you know, keywords and that kind of stuff. So I basically set a filter. Otherwise, you know, as you can see, there's been about almost 5,500 tweets that were filtered out because they didn't meet the criteria of the Twitter filter that I have here, but a little over 1,000 have. So now you can basically look through all of the tweets that basically or here, and then obviously you can go back and take a look at any images. And this is always dangerous because you never know what's going to be in an image. But you can basically go back and look at any of the images that were posted that were associated with that particular tweet. So the purpose of this is to be able to get a feeling of what's going on the ground there, and what the associated tweets are happening within the war zone. You can do this anywhere in the world if you don't have. I have lots of world cities programmed in, but you can also specify a specific lat lon and basically do the bounding box around it. So just kind of give you a taste for the kinds of things that we can do with Python, using some of the third-party libraries that are out there. In this case, the Twitter library that allows me to isolate the tweets that we're going to get, and then either further isolate those. So it's sort of relevant to what you guys are doing in some of your projects and being able to find, let's say, keywords. But in this case, instead of finding keywords in a file, it's finding and identifying keywords that exist within a tweet. And it tells us when we have images present and that kind of stuff. And if there were emojis within the tweet, it'll translate them to what they mean. So there are probably some interesting ones here in the list beyond. So that was thinking face. So instead of basically showing you what the emoji is and having to figure out what the emoji means, that was folded hands. And sometimes there'll be multiple emojis that exist within that. Here's one that contained European Union, Poland, Ukraine. Those are emojis that were within the original tweet, and we've translated them to what they mean so that you can basically look at the text. So anyway, just thought I would, since I've been running this anyway for the last, couple of days, I thought I would kind of give you a quick look at that particular application so you can kind of see what's possible. And it may spur some questions that are relevant to the classes you're taking right now, but just thought I would share that with you for since it's already running on my machine because I've been collecting this data. I think over the last couple of days or last 3 or 4 days, I think I've collected over 5,000 tweets and probably on the order of 300 or 400 images that came directly from that particular area. And then you collect the screen name, the location, the tweet itself, the emojis. You can filter out, certain words and that kind of thing from the process. So just kind of give you, Python is not just an environment that allows us to create, simple command line kinds of applications. We can build, full GUI applications, all using the Python ecosystem in order to do that. Any questions?
Professor Hosmer, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay.
Hi, Donna.
Sorry,
How are you?
I had to dial back. I'm good. How are you? I had to
Good.
dial back in because it wasn't working. Just a quick add to what you just showed us. I work for a major healthcare company, and we pay literally tens of thousands of dollars for a tool like that. That does everything you just said. Like it assigns emojis, and like positive, negative, neutral. The one that we pay for, it goes a step further with the emoji thing. And if somebody posts like, oh, I really wanted unnamed healthcare company to pay my bill, and they're being super sarcastic, like it will pick that up.
Mhm.
So it's definitely, I know there's not a ton of people on the call, but getting your Python skills up to the point of being able to build a GUI like that. I think the last time they invoiced us, it was like 10 grand.
Yeah, there's some other things that we're doing that we've added to this application. To your point, in one of the advanced classes that I'm teaching right now, which is CYBV 474, which is the machine learning with Python. I think it's called data analytics with Python. One of the things that we do in that class is we plug into this tool some machine learning algorithms that allow us to detect a couple of really important things. One is sentiment, which you're kind of talking about.
Right.
Identify sentiment of the tweet or the news story or whatever. But also to be able to, one of the other things we do in that class is we've built machine learning algorithms that can take in news stories and basically identify news stories that are either fake or real. And so we train the machine learning engine on tens of thousands of news stories that are labeled. In other words, we know these particular stories are either real or fake. And once we build the model, the same thing goes for sentiment. And once we build the models for those, we can take and push anything we want then into the model, again, all within the Python ecosystem. And then basically it will give us the likelihood of if it's positive or negative sentiment, or in the case of the news stories, it will give us a likelihood of whether or not the news story is real or fake. And it works pretty well. And, you know, we're getting results in the 90 to 95% range for the models that we've created there. So the additional work that we're doing that's kind of related to the Twitter capture, but scraping information from news stories and that kind of stuff is, again, something that we're both researching and developing and teaching classes on so students can do that. So if that whole area is of interest to you or anybody else on the call, there is a progression in the Python classes that we're teaching that I've created, you know, the intro, the violent Python, the machine learning in Python, and the new class that I'm teaching this semester that just started in the spring is cyber deception in Python, where we're using Python to create deception to help us to enhance traditional cybersecurity mechanisms by gleaning information about attackers and reconnaissance activity that's occurring, and, you know, using things like building things like honey nets, but more importantly, honey words and honey files and a bunch of those kinds of things, again, using Python. So for anybody on the call, if those areas are interest to you, we do advance this beyond the intro and violent Python classes into some other more advanced areas, and all focused on Python, which everybody seems to be doing. But thanks for the comments. I mean, we've been working on this application and integrating things like you've mentioned, like sentiment and that kind of thing. Our focus has been on collecting information from Twitter based on a bounding box so that we can hone in on areas of interest based on activities that are happening. So it's just it's a long road, but it's an area that we've been working on for some time. So thanks for your comments, you know, that other folks that are out there doing that for other purposes, you know, and providing insight into what folks are posting on Twitter and other social media platforms.
The tool that we pay for was built actually for marketing. We use it for tactical investigation, like to see if, you know, a doctor is, I don't know, you know, offering free stuff he shouldn't be or something like that. Or if they're saying, like, you know, like when COVID first started, the fraudsters were on high alert because that was an opportunity. So they would be saying, you know, silver and amber cream will cure, you know, COVID, blah, blah, blah. So we were looking for that stuff too, to shut that down so that people wouldn't get hurt, basically. But one other note, and then I'll stop talking because I actually
you're fine.
The ones that we pay for, as far as for what we're looking for, the querying capability is absolute garbage. Like, you know, like I'm guessing most of the people on the call know SQL or SQL, whatever you want to call it, and having that background and being able to query, you know, the internet and social media for, you know, this doctor doing this bad thing, or, you know, talking to this other bad doctor, the and the not and the or and that kind of stuff very rarely works. So there is certainly room in the industry to build those better tools and get paid for it.
I understand.
And
Well,
hit me up because ours sucks.
okay. Well, thanks for the feedback. And like I said, it's an area we've been working on for a long time, but it's always good to understand how people are trying to use it. In other words, what are the use cases for this kind of technology that can bring some real intelligence into this kind of monitoring of the social media platforms in order to be able to provide, early indications of problems or identifying fraudsters or that kind of stuff. So that's really great input. So I appreciate that very much. And as we continue to evolve the tools and that kind of stuff, would love to, share some of those and get your direct feedback.
You said that class with about the models and whatnot is 474.
Correct. Yeah. So 474 is it's called I think the title of the course is data analytics with Python, but it's it better stated, it's machine learning with Python. So we walk through the entire process of doing machine learning with the Python ecosystem in creating models that can actually do some of the things that you're talking about. So that's CYBV 474 is the machine learning class that I created and we're teaching. Now it's been ongoing for, I think this is the third semester that I've taught the class. And I teach it every semester. So it's offered both in the spring and the fall. It's not offered in the summer, but it's offered in spring and fall. So you can look into it. It's also, just so you know, it's part of the cybersecurity certificate program. So there are several other courses that are Python related and that are part of that certificate as well. So if it's something that you wanted to add to your education beyond, the undergrad degree, there are certificates that include that list of classes, that includes the deception class and the machine learning class and violent Python. So if you've taken some of those already, some of those would already apply to the certificate. So you can talk to your advisor, would be a better than me to know what stage you're in and what you want to do with your career. But some of the certificates are becoming really popular. So, but talk to your advisor. They should be able to give you some information about the sequence that you can get into if it's an area of interest to you or other folks that work in your organization, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because they changed our education reimbursement. So we get a little bit more than what the IRS allows for.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
The certificates are super helpful. I do have a question for the final.
Yeah.
Without obviously getting too much into the code that I use, I was able to run it with what in my head was pretty simple. Like I didn't have to do some of the other things that we did to larger files in the class leading up to it. So my question is there anything that you're wanting us to specifically do beyond, just code it?
No.
Because it was a large file.
Yeah,
So
it's just a large file, and the purpose of it is to basically just fill in that section of the starter script that I provided you with, and make sure that you print out those 3 variables. So they're already there printed out for you. So just print those out. It's very straightforward what you have to do, but I want to make sure that you guys understand how to utilize Python in order to be able to extract that information from that large file. I mean, I've already done most of the work for you in the starter script to, read in the file and put it into a list, and whatever. So, so no, it's not hard, but I want to make sure that you guys have a firm grasp on how to leverage the capabilities of the Python objects in order to deliver those results. So it should be very straightforward for you, but it's an important, kind of test to make sure that you've got the core concepts under wrap.
Okay. I made it hard for a few hours before I started taking that stuff out, and then I was like, oh, look, it runs.
There you go. Cool.
If we get to the end of this and nobody else has questions, could you go over what you were going over at the beginning again? Because I missed it because my computer wasn't connecting the audio.
Yeah, no problem. I can do it right now.
I can wait.
Basically, all I was saying is one of the folks that were on the call was talking about their approach to actually creating a loop to run through all of the elements of a list. And that method is perfectly fine to do. So in other words, I think I had one that actually worked here, but if you have a list and I want to go through and iterate, obviously one of the things in Python that's useful is that when you have things like a string, a list, a set, a dictionary, any of the standard data types, you can iterate through those. And then you can basically create an if statement to say, hey, if that string that's in the list matches, whatever I'm searching for, I can add that to my count and move on. And my only point was to that approach, which is perfectly fine, is that when you think about data types within Python, and that in this particular case that that data type was a list, you can always say my list dot, and it will give you a bunch of the methods that are built in and the properties that are associated with that. And you can do some research on that to see if there are methods that are associated with the list object, which is what you're working with, right? That would help you solve the problem. And maybe in a simpler way, not necessarily a better way, but just a more straightforward way in order to do it that might simplify your script. So that's all I exposed. I didn't solve the problem for anybody, but just pointing out that if you take a look at the list object and the methods that are associated with it, you may find a way to solve this particular final project a little bit easier. Not necessarily better, but just an easier approach to solving it.
Okay. Is there one of the things that I was Googling just like because of general curiosity once I finished, and we don't have to address this now, you can tell me to ask it later, but what happens when you have my list, A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, E, F, G. Is there a way to use like a list to iterate through a list? Like say that the list that you created, it would be like for each thing in my list, use, each string to iterate through text article or something. You know what I mean? Because we would use that at work.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let's say, for instance, I had a list called keywords equals, let's say, what else did I put in that list? I think I had DEF. So if I create a keywords list, right, and I wanted to loop through, I could say for each keyword, I'm having trouble typing today, in keywords, right? Then I can say if each keyword, how do I do that? Each keyword right? So I'm going to basically iterate through my keyword list, right? That I've created, which has 2 elements in it. And then I'm going to say if each keyword, so I'm going to iterate through the keyword list. And the first time through the list, I'm going to say if each keyword is in my list, then we'll just do something and say print found. And actually, let me do a little bit differently. Say found, comma, each keyword. I keep doing that with my list. I keep using the camel case when I didn't define it that way. Sorry. So basically in that simple loop, I basically loop through each of the keywords in the list to determine if it was in my list, and if it was, I printed out which ones were found. So in that particular case, I think I did what you suggested. If I have a list of keywords that I want to actually check for, I can iterate through the keywords, and then for each one of the keywords, I can check to see if it's in my list. And if it is, I can print out that we found that particular keyword. So in doing it that way, you're kind of leveraging the in operator within Python in two different ways. In the first way, we're using it in a loop, right, to iterate through all of the keywords and create a new variable that I created called each keyword each time through the loop. The second way I'm using the in keyword within Python is to check if that keyword exists in my list, right? And then if it does, and if this evaluates to true, so in other words, if it does exist, then we're going to print out found in each keyword. So within a simple loop, we've been able, so if you had a much longer list of keywords and a much longer list of words that you were searching through, you can perform that operation. Now, one thing I should say is that I'm doing this with a list, but what if I had a my string? I'll do this right this time. Let's say I create a string. Move this up a little bit. Have a little bit more screen real estate. So if I created a string that is, my string is the quick brown fox or the lazy dog, I can always say if, let's say, quick in my string. Print found. Boy, I messed that up, didn't I? If quick in my string found quick, right? And we found it because it was in there. But if I came back and I changed that a little bit and said found, I said fox, and I said found fox, you notice that in this case, it doesn't print found fox because fox is capitalized within the string. So what we can do in order to create a broader match, I can say in my string dot lower, why won't it let, oh, I got to go up first. Sorry. And now it found fox. So I can add methods that are associated with the string object, like lower, in order to be able to make a broader match of the word fox. So the word fox, capitalized, does exist. But if I compare fox to my string dot lower, it will basically then compare, because we did find the lowercase version of fox within my string. So it just gives you a broader match. So you can apply this method that you were suggesting. If I had multiple strings that I was looking for within a particular string or a list or a dictionary, I can perform these kinds of quick searches using the in operator in order to be able to identify those. Does that sort of answer your, I think, more general question?
It does. It does. If you were doing, so you have like if fox in my string, how would you do that with user input? Would you use if fox, like try and then drop down and then say like user input equals input paren, enter the word you want to search and close the parens and then go through it that way?
Yeah, you would basically say word input colon quote enter search word, right? So you're going to get input from the user, And then if the user, oops, let me do that again. Oh, we should put a comma and a colon and a space after that so it separates out. And then I could say fox, right? And so now the variable word contains the word fox. And now I could go back to my previous example. And instead of searching for fox, I would search for the contents of the variable word. And fox was found because fox was in the in this process. We can make this a little better by creating a script that does this. And basically, in this particular case, we could again say my string equals and then what I could say is while true, keyword and then what you could do is you could say if keyword in my string dot lower print found. And then what we could do is say up here, we could say something like if keyword equals Q, say break. So we would exit and then we come down here and say print search terminated user. So that if user types in Q in response to the prompt, it will end. Otherwise, we'll just do this forever. So I could say, we'll save as, I don't know, just to my desktop, I guess. Search. So now what we can do is, if I did everything right, which I'm sure I didn't, but we can try it. I can run this script and it'll ask me for a word to search. And I keep making that mistake. Yeah. Make this slightly prettier. And I could say fox, and it said found fox. Now it's going to ask me to enter another search word, and I can say cat. It says cat was not found. I can say, so this will fail, right? If I typed in jumped, right? It's going to say not found. So I can come back and correct my script by saying keyword dot lower. So put everything in lowercase so I get the broadest search match, right? So that way, oops. That way, no matter what the user types in, so if they typed in JUMP jumped, it's going to say jumped was found, because we basically created the lowercase version of whatever the user entered and compared it to the lowercase of the string. And now we get the broadest match. So again, if I said dog, it'll find dog. If I say cat, it won't find cat. And if I say Q, it'll say we terminated the script by the user. So just a little simple script where the user can just continue to enter in keywords, in comparison to whatever the string was that we're searching. Or you could do this with a list, or you could do this with a set, and you're going to do this with the dictionary. It's slightly more complicated, but same general concept, where you can create really simple scripts like this, where the user can basically just type in keywords that they're looking for, or you can create a list of keywords that the user wants to search, or you could even bring in a file that contains keywords or a file that you want to search and perform the same operation. Slightly more complicated, but nonetheless, you can apply the same general concept to any of those methods. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything else? Was this helpful for everyone to kind of just again go through some of these basic approaches of how we kind of tackle problems with Python that can be very interactive? And I did a couple of things here that are really important as a technique. You know, I started out working in the Python shell to experiment with some of the concepts that we want to put into our actual script. And then after we've kind of figured out how to, you know, enter stuff from the user, how to actually perform simple searches, then you can, as Donna was requesting, like, okay, how do I, you know, take what I've learned down here in the Python shell and then actually create a simple script that will do that. And then I can do it over and over again. So now I have a script that, you know, we can take to the next level. And then if you wanted to go to the next level, I'll do one more thing. I think I can probably do this relatively quickly. Let me see if I can find a file that I'm looking for. Should have been easier. Okay, maybe it's in 473. There we go. I think I put that other script on my desktop. Yeah, I did. Just so it's easy to find. So if we want to take this to the next level, right, I could basically say with open dialog text as target. Then I can say my string equals target.read. Get rid of this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to now search for anything within my string, which was the contents of dialog.text. It's a little bit more interesting, right? Instead of just the simple string that I entered. Let's see if I did that right. So now I can search for Ahab, and Ahab was found. I could search for whale, and whale was found. I can search for XYZ, and XYZ is not found, right? So if we were to look at the file dialog.txt, we would find that it was the transcript or the actual book, Moby Dick. But in this case, I've just read in the entire contents of that file into my string, and now I can actually perform that same search on a much larger file, right? That I might want to do. So now if I go back to my desktop and I want to search for all files, there's dialog. So remember, with Python, I can open other files as long as I select the all files here, and I can bring this in, and here is the entire file that I'm actually searching. So you could basically, you could search for captain now back in our script. So remember, we're doing this, so I can now search for captain, and captain is found, right? So basically, it can apply this same concept now. And this is kind of how you approach things in Python, is you start with something simple and build upon it. And by, in this case, I've just enhanced the script by saying, well, I don't want to just search the simple string. I want to search the entire contents of this file, and then be able to allow the user to type those in. And then obviously the next level would be is I could create a file that contained a whole bunch of keywords, and then I could do them all at once and get the totals and that kind of thing. So the most important thing is that when you're doing this kind of thing, to build upon your success. So one of the things that I kind of tell people to do is that once you get a script like this that's working and you want to take it to the next level, like, you know, being able to create a list of keywords or a file that contains keywords, save this, and then save it as save it as search advanced. Right. So now I still have search, right? I can always go back to this version of the script, but now if I wanted to enhance it, I can enhance it. And if I screw it up totally, I can always go back to the original search script and start over again. So as you build these individual pieces, then you can basically kind of add new capabilities as you go. And it's really an important concept in Python because it's a scripting language that we can actually do this. And we can quickly test new versions of our script, but always save the previous version and then create a new version when you want to add new capabilities to the script. And and you may think, well, geez, why wouldn't I just write the whole script that I wanted from the beginning? And you can, but in this way, you kind of take these small steps and nibbles out of what you're trying to do, and you become more successful in doing that. And believe it or not, you know, folks like myself that are writing Python code every single day, we use this approach to basically build the basic script and add on. Actually, even worse, we actually come to the Python shell and experiment with things like the Twitter library I showed you, make sure we understand how to use it, and then start to incorporate it into a script and move forward. So the 3 steps of the process are: 1, go to the Python shell and make sure that you understand the different elements that you need. Number 2, create a simple script that does some of the basics, and then start creating versions of that add more and more capability to your script. So it's a way to kind of progress through the process. So again, that approach works really well with scripting environments, which is more difficult to do if you're working with a programming environment like C, where you got to define everything before anything works. Here, in a scripting language like Python, we can experiment really quickly. And this goes all the way from simple scripts like this, all the way to when you're creating machine learning libraries and whatever, and you're experimenting with those. So it's the ability to rapidly build scripts that tackle more complex problems. If you approach it this way, you will be less frustrated, and number 2, the process will go relatively quickly once you kind of combine these 3 different methods together in order to build your scripts. So again, hopefully that diversion was somewhat useful.
I appreciate that advice. There's been several instances at work where I was running code and, you know, it ran and it actually did what I wanted it to, but I didn't have File Explorer open to see that the file was created. So then I had to figure out when exactly I got it to work. So that starting simple is not my forte, but it's really good advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a good progression. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll keep you on the phone until this is up, but I want to give other people an opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, anybody else? Allison, you usually have something, or Brian or Josh. Anybody have any other questions or comments?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay, super. All
Good
right.
morning. Mine's kind of simple.
Okay, I like simple.
So for week 7, you know how we're doing the messages from the client to the server to client. So you want 10 messages. Is it just like basic, like it's whatever I want to create? Like it could be test 1, test 2, test 3, or is it, am I overthinking this?
Nope, you can do anything you want. It's you know, basically put together whatever messages you want to send over, and then get the response back. One of the things to do is to kind of see, one of the things you're doing is getting a hash back from the server back to the client. And So kind of one of the interesting things is to print out, what was the text, what was the message that you sent, and then next to it, what's the hash? So you can kind of see that those change every time that you go through the process. So yeah, whatever, there is no right or wrong answer regarding what message you want to send. Sometimes folks will enter in like fake passwords, like, Apple 123 or whatever, just to kind of show that the hashes between those different fake passwords are dramatically different when you come back with the hash of those. So some folks have done that. Some folks have put in song titles or artists they like, or movie titles, or whatever names of their family members or kids, whatever, doesn't matter, just to kind of get that information going back and forth between the client and server and kind of seeing the hash that comes back.
Okay, sounds good. The other question is, so the example that we have is interactive. So I'm starting the server, and then on the client side, I'm entering what I want to send to the server.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want it to be interactive like that? Or are you expecting it to kind of have a loop or something that almost does it itself? I don't know if that makes sense.
The goal there is for you to create your messages either in a list or a bunch of different strings that you could put into a list, and then create a loop that would send, receive, send, receive, send, receive, and it would do it automatically. So the demonstration script was to kind of show you how to do that from a user entry, but the goal would be for the final script would be to create a list of messages. So for example, what you would do in that particular case is you could have a variable that you message list equals bracket message 1, comma, quote, message 2, etc. And then once you have that message list, you could loop through and iterate through the message list and send a different message every time. And obviously the way you would do that is say, for each message list. And then you're gonna actually do this, but you're basically gonna send each message. And so you would be sending those across in a loop, just like this. You create a for loop that would basically go through each one of your messages. And then inside your for loop is going to be where that code is in your script that's going to actually do the send and receive of the response from the server and printing that information out. So that would be the preferred method. So again, you could put whatever you want in your list that has the different messages you want to send. And that would be probably the simplest way to do that. So you can iterate through the list.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, we're kind of coming up on the end of the session. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down unless there's any final questions. And I will post this. I did turn the recording on, I hope. I think I did. Yes, I did. So I'll take the recording and I'll post the recording back to each of the sessions. So each of the classes. So if you wanted to review any of this, it'll be there for you as well, or anybody else that wasn't able to attend live. So have a great rest of the weekend, and hopefully wherever you are, the weather's good, and hopefully things calm down in the Ukraine and in Russia, and hopefully that gets settled. I don't have great hopes for that, but hopefully it will, and things will go back to normal. So we'll just be dealing with things like COVID, and not war. So anyway, have a great weekend, everybody, and stay safe. And I will not be having a Python tutoring session next Saturday. I have to travel next weekend, so I won't be doing it on Saturday, but I'll post a message to everybody to let them know that there won't be a tutoring session next week. So have a good rest of the weekend, and I'll be signing off. Take care, everybody. Hopefully this was
Thank
helpful.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.